how are you managing your time really? So you've got this this tour coming up, which we'll talk about. You obviously just released an album this year, and then you've got your dad duties as well. I mean, how are you managing your time, Kyle? What does a typical day look like? There probably isn't one, is there?
Well, that's funny you say that. No, there's not really. I try to make them as kind of normal and so for example, I have a studio that I rent out downtown that's kind of like my headquarters. And
Mm,
because music is just my full-time thing, I
mm.
don't necessarily have like an other job or something I have to go to. And I liked that at first. Now, of course, it took me a long time. There was probably a decade that went by where I didn't make a penny. I had to pay people to be out there. And believe me, I'm sure so then, now it's like, wow, I'm just so grateful that, I'm able to do this. But man, at the end of the day, I try to stay as normal as possible. So I go down to my studio, try to have a bit of like here we say like a 9 to 5 job, even though for me it's more like 11 to 4, but
Yeah.
all good. But yeah, I'm usually down at the studio. Then at nighttime, I'm doing my dad thing,
Yeah,
you know.
man. Yeah. Again, it's sort of I do respect the grind. And was that your kind of inspiration? Obviously, you had the Rainmaker stuff with Minecraft, but then also the red carpet tour, all ages shows, Kyle. I mean, that's not something we see regularly from
Right.
artists, especially in the rock scene and alternative scene. Certainly here in the UK. When I've spent time in the US, and it doesn't seem to be too common there as either. When you came up with the red carpet tour concept, again, as a way to connect yourself with fans, what are the logistical issues? I know you've talked in interviews before, difficulties finding promoters and things where, to do this, but crucially, was being a dad a motivator and sort of realizing that, a lot of artists aren't necessarily connecting to younger audiences. I love the fact those shows start at 5. You're
Yeah,
you're taking into account what it's like to be a parent.
absolutely.
Taking those shows, and I respect that. So, but what was the original kind of impetus for that? Was it being a dad and kind of wanting to connect with a younger fan base?
I love that question, Dom. I think it's a couple of things
Mm,
actually. I think it was after, like you mentioned, the Minecraft videos and all this kind of stuff happened. And then, a few years of doing that, when we would be opening a tour, let's say, or we're opening for a band and there would be an all ages show, there might be one or two on a tour. And we would have these groups of kids come up and they'd be like, oh, we came here just to see you guys. And I would think, wow, that's so cool, because you got to think about this too. At the time, a lot of the music industry guys were like, oh, all the streaming and YouTube, that doesn't really matter as long, you got to be selling records. And so I always kind of came into the mindset of, well, even though I got millions of streams here, they say it doesn't really matter as much. And again, man, we would go out and do these tours. We would do our headlining tours, and a lot of times we'd have not a lot of people there. And it's not just for us. I mean, I don't like to make excuses for bands who don't sell a lot of tickets, but we just did not sell a lot of tickets. And even having hits on the radio and the rock charts and blah, blah, blah. But again, when we would do these all ages shows, we would see these kids. And then about 2 years ago, we had a show in Omaha, and it was a headlining show. Again, we weren't really thinking the all ages thing, but it was all ages. And we got there, and honestly, it might sound small, but there was like 30 kids there.
mhm.
And we started playing. And I mean, these kids started jumping, singing every song. And my mind, I was like, what? You know what I'm
Mm,
saying?
mm.
So that was kind of it. Of course, being a father and that mindset was a big part of it too. But I think it really was kind of just feeling what was right inside and not listening, oh, that this doesn't matter or that doesn't matter. These fans look like they really do matter and they do care about this music. And if these are the people that want to come see me, I'll play in front of 30 of them every night of the week. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I think that you said previously that playing to 30 to 50 kids is actually, it can be as loud as playing to thousands, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
they're
Well,
really
again,
into it.
yeah, when they're all jumping, yeah, man.
Yeah,
Yeah, for
absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely. And I think, it's interesting, Carl, that you talk about, again, your journey as a musician, someone that was not making a lot of money for the first amount of time. The Minecraft stuff, I think, was a really interesting way to connect you to, again, because, again, you've always been very visual, and we'll talk about the visual inspirations, but the Minecraft stuff's interesting because it almost like, I don't know if it's right for me to say that Blacklight District, you approach it like a business, but like that was a really great way to connect with a whole different audience. Again, the videos, all of that stuff. Was that in your mind when you approached the, the collaboration, thinking about how can I take this music to a whole new audience, a whole different level? Was it a conscious decision from you from an artistic perspective? And was there also a business element of it? Because again, millions and millions of streams, lots of new fans, and just an interesting creative pivot for you from the beginning of your
Yeah,
career, perhaps.
absolutely. No, and again, another great question, because I love talking about this stuff, because to me, this is the information that if 10 years from now a young kid comes back to watch this interview, there's little pieces of information. I'm sure in conversations you have every day with anybody you talk to, there's always something in there that we can come back to. So, man, I would see these Minecraft videos on YouTube, and sometimes they'd have 10 million, 20 million. Again, that would blow my mind. I'd seen a few anime channels that had some of my songs up. One of the videos had 1 million, and again, at the time, it's cool. So basically, I just reached out to this guy who ended up being Rainimator, and he had just so happened to have heard of me from one of these other anime videos. So we kind of started going. The original thought, though, was, wow, 10 million views on that video. Could you imagine if we could get one of our songs in there and it did get like 10 million views? And again, going back to what I said a few minutes ago about how some of the industry people were like, well, that is good, but you don't want to put too much stock in that because that's just one small piece. And to be fair, that was a while ago when it wasn't exactly how it is today. But, as we started doing them, they just kept getting bigger and bigger. So we did the first video. It did about 1 million views the first week. 3 weeks later, we did the second video, a song called Cold as Ice. It did like 3.5 million the first week.
Yeah.
And again, they would just keep going up. And then from there, the song would all of a sudden be charting on iTunes in the UK or Australia or wherever, you know what I'm saying? And after it kept doing that, because again, when this happens, you think, oh, this is probably just a one and done type thing. Like you had your moment. But yeah, man, years and years have gone by. I think I would 100% say that I would not be in the spot I'm in had it not been for Minecraft and YouTube and doing some of this outside the box stuff, because I did spend most of the early years, trying to be on radio, trying to get the festivals, you know what I mean? So it's just that outside the box thinking, man. And I think that is more important today than ever.
I think it was really interesting, Cal, and certainly a compliment to your artistic vision that you were able to sort of see another avenue of so I work as a therapist, and one of the most interesting things I've seen in recent years is a therapist who works with young people, but he has a YouTube channel where he plays Minecraft, and and he's connected with a whole audience of people because Minecraft's obviously globally renowned. And I just think, I saw a lot of his business and his work and his research and the things he does has completely blown out of proportion from what he was doing. And I just thought it was really interesting to get your insight into why you made that decision, because again, pivoting from grafting, working hard, trying to figure out what to do, and then you go, okay, well, this is interesting, a new audience here, and it sounds like you've done that, Cal. So credit to you. I do want to ask again, because again, when you released, we'll talk about the new stuff, but when you released Instant Gratification, a lot of those songs on there, again, a lot of millions of streams as well. Could you take me back? I know it's not that long ago, but when you released Instant Gratification, now there's two prongs to this question, because I'm going to ask you about your welcome now in a little bit as well.
Yeah.
But when you released Instant Gratification 2015, like, where were you then, compared to where you are now as an artist? Like, how have you progressed and developed from that time in 2017 and Instant Gratification, seeing those songs grow and develop and change as your audience has? How have you changed and developed since that time in your life?
I love that. And by the way, you can, now that you mentioned you're a therapist, it makes sense, because I'm perfect therapy client. You know what I'm saying? So, man, I really love that question, because, 2016, 2017, there was one album I put out right before Instant Gratification called To Whom It May Concern. And I always kind of tie those into one, just because it was all so much together, But so before all that, there was the actual debut album that was technically released in 2014 called Worldwide Controversy. And at the time, you know, we had sold about 100,000 downloads. It was a big on Sirius XM, which is satellite radio here. There's a channel called Octane, which like for the US, it's like the biggest rock station there is basically. And it was a pretty big hit. You know, I was 22, 23 years old when that happened. And wow, you know, about a year later, there was a big falling out between the label, the manager, myself. It was just a big bad story of just dumb music industry stuff. And, you know, so that's why I love you asking about these particular years, because I felt like in this like instant gratification 2017 era, that was when I feel like I really had to fight to like I don't, nothing was guaranteed at the time. I wasn't making good money. I didn't have like a touring base. It was like I was still in the, I guess, fight or flight mode, where it's like I'm still trying to secure my spot just to get in the door, essentially. You know. But the cool thing is that as these songs are coming out, so for example, Cold as Ice, probably the biggest song on that album, has a Minecraft video. I think it came out maybe a month or so before the album. It is over like 75 million views now, and at the time it was like we just mentioned, you know, 5 million the first week. You know, even then it was like pretty crazy. It feels like, wow, you know, you almost don't realize it until you look back later. Like at the time, I'll go to these shows now, man, and I'll have these kids that say, oh my God, you have no idea, Cold as Ice in 2017 and that whole album. Yet while it was happening, I felt like I really didn't have that many listeners, you know? So that's what I love, when I can go back and people can say how much it meant to them. But to answer your question, I think I was still just in that, not that I'm any less like fighting for it now, but I just needed to secure my spot more so back then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, you know, as a sort of, you know, question from that, then, do you feel like your spot is secured now as someone that's a full-time musician, as someone that knows what it's like to make nothing but still be grinding, you know, doing the tours, and again having to work out how to pivot, obviously how to manage a life outside of music as well? Is your spot secured now then, Kyle?
You know, I don't know if an artist, well, at least for me, I don't know if I can ever say it's secure, because you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You know what I'm saying? So I guess I could say that I do feel I guess maybe the word secure isn't the right to sound like, oh, I'm secured and nothing can happen to me, because we know that that's not true. But I do feel like I think the music has had enough impact, whether it's on a big or a small level, that impact, for whether it was 100 people or 100,000 people, I think it's there and they're going to take it with them. You know what I mean? So in that sense, I do feel really accomplished. But in my mind, I feel like I'm just getting started and there's a lot left in the tank. You know what I mean? And I still, like, as an artist, I always hope to feel that my biggest project is still ahead of me. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the future in a minute, because like I said, I think there's obviously, like you say, a lot left in the tank there, Carl. But I do want to take you back again, 2014, you know, when you're coming out with Worldwide Controversy, you know, very, very different time, you know, in multiple reasons, 2014, you know, in the early 2000s. What would you say to yourself then now? Like if you were sat in front of yourself then, 2014, Kyle, you know, who without the knowledge, well, with the knowledge you have now, what would you say to your younger self, to that person that released that record, that had that drive to do that, with the uncertainty of how it was going to work, and what, you know, to what level you would eventually get to?
Right. I love that too. I have to say, I just love most of your questions you're asking here, man. I just, because most of the time I'm talking about how did you get your band name and all this kind of stuff. So I just like when I can dive in here. I don't mean to keep getting off
No,
track.
of course. No, absolutely. Take your time. It's a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you.
You know, man, it's so, it's when I start thinking about this stuff, it really does take me back. But if I could really just look at like say when I was 22 years old and just getting started, I would just say, man, follow what you feel is right. If you feel that something is the right way to go and everyone is saying, no, don't do that. Like typically, I would say your gut is going to give you the best feeling, you know? There's definitely things I've done or decisions I've made that I would probably go back and change. But again, at the time when you're in the younger mindset, it's not only wanting to secure your spot, but you're also trying to figure out, how does this all work? Do you have to do this? Do I do this? Who's my guy? And there's just so much that factors in. But I think it would just be like, follow what you feel is right from an artistic point of view. You know, try not to take things so personally. I used to have a real problem with that, you know, being in the studio and someone say, oh, that chorus, you know, I think it could be better. I'd be like, well, F you, man. Like, I think this is awesome, you know? And I guess it's just trying, I would tell myself to take yourself out of it sometimes and look in from a third party because, you know, again, like we mentioned earlier, hindsight is always 2020, right? Looking back. But yeah, I think just following what you feel is the right way for you as an artist in that
Yeah.
scenario. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most interesting things about you, Kyle, is obviously you come from, you know, from addiction. You've had to face addiction yourself. You mentioned publicly in interviews your parents have also done that.
Yep.
And I'm particularly interested in, you know, as you create as an artist, you know, you have said that music is an escape for you. To what level then, if you feel comfortable talking about it, does your own struggles with addiction and crucially having to grow up with parents who've also had, you know, had that and gone through those challenges, to what level does that inspire you on a creative level? You know, does that inspiration come forth when you're in the studio? Does it come forth when you're sitting, you know, sitting at home? Like, where does that inspiration come from? Because I know it's a crucial part of your work.
Absolutely. You know, it really can, I like to say inspiration can strike anytime. It's always funny because you can go in the studio and say, I'm going to make a song today and nothing's going to happen. And then the time when you don't want to go and it's like, oh shit, I got the idea right now, you know? Um, I, I think at least looking back now, I try to think that I took maybe pain or I guess the traumatizing things of life when you're in
Mm,
that young age. And it was tough, man, you know, but I always tried to use that as fuel. You know,
mm,
both my parents are deceased. My mom was the big one because we were close. You know, I was a
mhm,
younger kid, but I always tried to use that to say, you know, no matter what it takes for me, I am going to make sure that this means something. And that was my old dot. I don't know if I feel the exact same way, maybe from where I
mm,
was coming from, but as a younger dude, it just felt like if I had to lose these people, there needs to be a reason. I need to try to turn that terrible reason into a, you know, it's never going to be okay, but a reason to say, you know what, it worked out and everything was good. And I tell a lot of my fans this when I'll have a kid, you know, message or their parents say, oh, you don't know how
mm,
tough of a place this kid was in a few months ago. I'll have people find my address, don't know how they get it, write me letters and say, I'm crying on this paper because I don't want to go on. And when I feel that people have truly connected somehow with the music and that
mm.
got them through their thing. To me, that's the win. There's nothing more I could have done. It doesn't matter about the money or if you're famous or you're getting platinum records. If one kid heard that song and even just for those 3 minutes was able to leave that desperate place, to me, that's the win, man. That's what it's
Yeah.
all about, you know?
Yeah. I've got a couple more questions, Carl, but I do want to sort of shoehorn this one in as well. I asked you a couple of minutes ago about what you would say to 2014. I'm very curious, um, what you would say to younger you now, because one of the things I'm particularly interested in is, again, when you do these all ages shows and you see those kids filled with joy, jumping up
Yeah.
and down, I wonder if there's something in that for you as a kid that, and I don't want to make any assumptions here, but from what I've read, not the easiest run as a kid. You know, not the
Yeah.
most fun, not the most fun time, I imagine, and I say that with respect, of course. But what is it? You know, what would you say to younger you now, the, you know, child Kyle, who is, you know, who, I guess, looking at what you've become and also the joy that you bring to other kids and young people.
Yeah. Man, I wish I had a better answer other than to just, as simple and as cliche as it would sound, I would literally tell that young kid that, hey, everything's going to be all right.
Mm, mm,
Everything. And as, again, as simple and like, well, that's not much, but you know, that might have gone a long way at certain times, you know, because again, when you kind of go through these traumas or whatever you want to call them these days, these bad events, you know,
mm,
it changes you. It really does, you know, and it makes you fear. So I always felt like when I was a young teenager, I was always afraid of everything. I was too scared to do this because of, you know, this kind of stuff. And it makes you really insecure.
yeah.
And I would really just say that everything is going to be okay. You
Mm,
know,
mm.
I'm sorry if that's not the best
No,
answer,
no,
but that's honestly what I would say.
yeah, it is. There's a truth in that, and I think that, and when you say it's going to be okay, it's nice because, you know, you may not have heard that a lot when you were
Yeah.
younger. So, you know, to hear that from, well, yourself,
And you know,
I
throwing
suppose.
one thing in,
Mm,
actually on that instant gratification album, there's a song that's just called Okay.
mm,
And I remember writing that song because the chorus is simple, like everything's gonna be okay,
Mm,
okay, okay, yeah. And I wrote that song, and afterward, a few days later, listening to it, it was almost the first time, at least in my mind, I felt like, wow, maybe I am writing music to myself sometimes. It's me, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm
mm,
telling myself there,
yeah.
and that was just something that hit me a few years ago. So
Yeah.
who knows what that is, you know?
No, I think that's really beautiful. Thank you, Kyle, as well for that that little
Of
extra
course.
bit there. I think it's it's beautiful hearing you talk about your music, and again, seeing I've seen some live clips on YouTube and things, seeing the connection you have with people. So with that in mind, and this is a question I do like to ask, select artists. Given that you have come from what you've come from and the challenges you've faced, and given to where you are now, being able to do these tours and having the ability to, create music and obviously provide for, a family in that way, what would you like your legacy as an artist to be? And do you give that much consideration? Some artists, they hate it. They're like, that's not for me to decide. And some are
Yeah.
like, of course I think about it. Absolutely, I think about it because it's what I'm leaving the world. So,
Right.
what would you like your legacy as an artist to be, Kyle?
Man, as much as I wish I could say I don't think about that, I don't care, but I
Mm,
definitely do think about it.
mm,
And you know, maybe somehow it also ties into all this childhood stuff about wanting to maybe feel validation or feel like I
mm,
was worth enough or
mm,
it's funny because my wife and I the other day were talking about this and I was like, some of these artists, maybe myself included, you lose your parent or go through some horrible things as a child, then you almost like you want to put impossible tasks in front of you, like becoming a rock star. I'm going to become president, like because you're trying so hard to fill something that it's like, well, I got to put something completely impossible there because it's going to
mm.
take me forever to get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I kind of stress. So, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. We were talking about legacy. We were
Oh
talking
yeah,
about yeah.
legacy. My bad.
No, 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 at all.
I would just love. I do think about it, man. If one day I could know that if when I was a teenager, I used to think that if I had passed away and my music was maybe playing on the radio 20 years after I was gone, to me, that was a legacy because of artists I like. But now, with it being so different, music or no music, I just hope the people that connected with me on a personal level or musically
Mm-hmm.
can look back and just know that, hey, man, that guy really did try. He really had the best of intentions and only wanted to leave good because that is in all honesty what it is. Tried to make the best music I could, tried to turn my pain into something beautiful for other people. And at this point, man, that's really all I could ask for if I'm lucky enough to get that. Now, again, I think there's a lot of road left to go. I've been doing this over a decade now, but I hope the best, like I said earlier, is ahead. And I hope we're here in a few years talking on the next level. You know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
man?
I hope so, man. I think that's again one of the things I do want to say is I think that you can see it comes from a real genuine place because of what you've been through and because of your actions now, doing these tours, connecting with younger audience. You can see that it's crucial for you to again,
Yeah.
you practice what you preach effectively and you're trying to
Right. Right.
you're trying to benefit people. It's certainly not, and I know you said this publicly before, but it doesn't appear to be about the money at all. It's more about that
Right.
personal connection, which I think is great. It's great you can get money as well, but
For
still,
sure,
yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and again, it was always just if I could provide. I'm not asking to be rich and famous.
Mm,
If I could provide for my family, I was happy with that. If it goes more, of course, I'm happy. We're all only human, but my core mission, it never started to say, you know what, I'm going to find a job to
mm.
play music. It was I want to create art, and if the other stuff happens, of course, I'm going to be blessed and happy. But man, the music was always so important to me, and that's really all I could say. That's
Absolutely.
literally it, man.
No, I see it, Kyle, and I respect you for it. Absolutely. All right, we're going to do some promo questions now. Obviously, we're in the UK. You are globally known for your work through streaming, through again the other avenues that you've approached. A lot of people approach you, like you've said, internationally. So, what is your message for UK fans? I'm not fishing for a UK tour or anything like that, but what is the message for those people of any age that support you over here in the UK?
Man, there's been so much great support from the UK over the years. And believe me, I want to get to the UK. I can't officially announce right now that we're coming, but if anyone's out there in the UK listening, I promise I am trying and we're going to do our best to bring this show over to the UK. I've been in a couple of I think there was a magazine called Power Play,
Yep.
possibly.
Yep.
Yep, they did actually a great review of the To Whom It May Concern album in 2016. A great, actually, lad over there named Matt Carpe, I believe.
Okay.
He's done many books. But yeah, I would just tell any fans in the UK, I thank you so much for your support. I know you're in my top 3 countries, I believe, in terms of streaming. And I will definitely try my best to get over there and thank you. And again, it blows my mind that all the way across the pond, people can be sitting there listening. And
Yeah.
man, it's not crazy when you think about it. We create feelings somewhere, and 12,000 miles away across the planet, someone's getting their own feeling from that same thing. What a world we live in, huh?
Beautiful, right? Beautiful.
I love it, man.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, final question I'm going to leave to you. I'm going to give the floor to you. Obviously, there is a record out now. You can do better. But is there anything that I have missed that you would like to promote and plug before we finish up today?
I think, Dom, you pretty much hit it on the head. I am officially a big fan of yours. Shout out to our publicist friend Jamie for setting this up.
Of course.
And I definitely, I hope you would be down to chat again, maybe in the future, man. And if I ever get over to the UK, obviously your name is on the guest list. And if you ever come over here, man, and you want to come to a show, you just let us know, man. We'd love to see you.
I would love to. And once again, good luck, Kyle, in taking it forward, because I really respect what you do, and I think it's so cool.
Dom, I appreciate you so much, man. And like I said, some of the best questions I've ever been asked are right here. And good luck to you too, brother. I hope to see big things from you.